إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار أما بعد. Last 2 weeks ago we talked about the life of the Prophet ﷺ with his wives, and particularly with his wife Khadija radiallahu anha. And today, inshallah, we want to listen to some of the stories of the blessed house of the Prophet ﷺ with his children. And from most of these stories that are narrated are the stories of Fatima radiallahu anha. As we know, the Prophet ﷺ had daughters, Zainab, Ruqayya, Fatima, and Kulthum in this order. And he also had boys. He had Ibrahim and Qasim and Abdullah, but all of his young boys died at a very young age. And some of the scholars, they said, perhaps the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala behind that is that so no one would think there is a prophet after the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam if he had an adult son. In any case, the Prophet ﷺ only had his daughters, and all of his daughters died during his lifetime, except for Fatima radiallahu anha. She outlived him, but only by 6 months. And this is one of the first points to take notice when we talk about the life of Rasulullah ﷺ with his children, is to notice that he buried all of his children ﷺ, except for one. So imagine the difficulties and the sabr of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that he had to bury every single one of his children during his lifetime, yet he was the most patient, the Imam of the patient ones, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Imam al-Tirmidhi, he narrates in the hadith that Aisha radiallahu anha said about Fatima, ما رأيت أحدا أشبه سمتا ودلا وهديا برسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من فاطمة في قيامها وقعودها رضي الله عنها. She said, I never saw anyone that resembled the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام more in her way that she carried herself, and in her walk, and in her standing and in her sitting, more than Fatima رضي الله عنها. Fatima resembled the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام greatly. And she says, radiallahu anha, when she used to enter, when Fatima used to enter upon the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, قام إليها فقبلها وأجلسها في مجلسه. وكان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا دخل عليها قامت إليه فقبلته وأجلسته في مجلسها. Aisha radiallahu anha says, when Fatima would enter upon the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he would stand up and give her a kiss, and he would give her his seat that he was sitting in. And Fatima radiallahu anha, whenever the Prophet ﷺ entered upon her in her house, she would do the same. She would stand up for her father and give him a kiss, and she would tell him to sit where she had been sitting. Where did this respect come from? Where did this love come from? This came from Fatima radiallahu anha seeing the best character and the highest level of respect from her father. So then we see that respect was mutual. And there is this beautiful relationship between father and daughter. And they love one another and they highly respect one another. And this cannot come about by force. I cannot force my children and say, when you see me, get up and kiss my hand and do this and do that, and it becomes like a ritual for them, but they will not believe in it. If they do not see a father or a mother who respects the child also and gives them this high status of dignity in the household, and they respect them and they love them and they see that their father and their mother are the best examples of Islam, if we do that, then inshallah our children will naturally learn to respect us, and we will also respect our children as young adults and as adults as they grow up. Aisha radiallahu anha also narrates in another hadith, narrated by Bukhari, that this is during the time when the Prophet ﷺ was near his death. أقبلت فاطمة تمشي كأن مشيتها مشي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم مرحبا بابنتي ثم أجلسها عن يمينه. The Prophet ﷺ, in one of his seatings and one of his gatherings before his death, he saw Fatima enter the room. And Aisha said, Fatima entered, she was walking exactly as the Prophet ﷺ would walk. As if she's the same walk of the Prophet ﷺ. So she resembles him, she's imitating her father, because she sees in him the best role model and the best example, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So the Prophet ﷺ said a beautiful word, marhaban bibnati, welcome to my daughter. How many of us have young children and we say to them, marhaban? How many of us even say the salam when we see our family and when we see our children? We know that saying assalamu alaikum is something that is between Muslims. But do we neglect that in our own household? Do we say to our family members assalamu alaikum when they come and go and when we enter the house and when we leave the house? The Prophet ﷺ, he said about something that may be the secret for a lot of us in our households. He said sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, أَفَلَا أَدُلُّكُمْ عَلَى شَيْءٍ إِذَا فَعَلْتُمُوهُ تَحَابَبْتُمْ أَفْشُوا السَّلَامَ بَيْنَكُمْ. The Prophet ﷺ said, shouldn't I guide you to something that if you will do it, you will love one another? Spread the salam between yourselves. This may be the cause that why we don't have love in our households, why there is hatred and resentment in our households. Maybe some of it starts from as small as a place as we do not respect one another by saying assalamu alaikum when we see them and when we greet them. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to his daughter, marhaban bibnati, welcome to my daughter. And then he told her to sit down on his right side, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam instilled in his children a sense of responsibility, and he taught them the deen because they are going to have to grow up on their own. We cannot force our children to live upon Islam after we are gone. They're going to make their own decision. So the Prophet ﷺ is telling his children to follow Islam as your own decision. And he said to Fatima radiallahu anha, in his very first things that he said in his nubuwah, from the very first things that he said when he was calling people to Islam, is that when he stood on a mountain, he told all of his family members and all of the people, لا أملك لكم من الله شيئا. I cannot prevent you and I cannot help you at all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything is between you and Allah. I can only give you the message. So the Prophet ﷺ then said, يا فاطمة بنت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنقذي نفسك من النار فإني لا أملك لك من الله شيئا. O Fatima, the daughter of Rasulullah, save yourself from the hellfire, because I cannot prevent you and save you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the least bit. Everyone, even the daughter of a prophet, has their own responsibility with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nobody is going to be saved by who they are related to, who they are connected to, who they were friends with in this life. Everything is going to be individual between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet ﷺ has so many ahadith where he would teach his daughters, and he would teach his son-in-law, Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. For example, the Prophet ﷺ, as narrated by Bukhari, came to the house of Ali and Fatima. Ali, as we know, is the cousin of Fatima, and they were married. So the Prophet ﷺ would often give them guidance. And from the things that he said when he came to them one night, is he knocked on the door, and they answered, and the Prophet ﷺ said to them, أَلَا تُصَلِّيَانِ أَلَا تُصَلِّيَانِ. Why don't you pray? Or shouldn't you be praying? Or why don't you pray? Imagine the Prophet ﷺ goes to his adult married daughter's house to remind her to do qiyam al-layl, to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do ibadah. Some of us, we may suspect or know that our children don't pray at all. And we know that they have not prayed for weeks or months or years, but we don't say anything. The Prophet ﷺ, look at his example. He's standing up with, he's telling his daughter to stand up and do qiyam al-layl, to stand up and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, an extra prayer during the nighttime. We have a responsibility as parents to save ourselves and our families, so that our children don't say, my father never taught me, my father never reminded me or told me what I should be doing. واذكر في الكتاب إسماعيل إنه كان صادق الوعد وكان رسولا نبيا وكان يأمر أهله بالصلاة والزكاة وكان عند ربه مرضيا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about Ismail alayhi salam that remember Ibrahim, or mention Ismail in the book, and he used to order his family with prayer and with charity. He used to order his family and tell them and give them reminders to pray and to give charity. So we have a responsibility to teach those under our control. Also the Prophet ﷺ, he taught Fatima radiallahu anha one day a beautiful dua. And he said to her, مَا مَنَعَكِ أَن تَسْمَعِي مَا أُوصِيكِ بِهِ أَن تَقُولِي إِذَا أَصْبَحْتِ وَإِذَا أَمْسَيْتِ يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك أستغيث أصلح لي شأني كله ولا تكلني إلى نفسي طرفة عين. The Prophet ﷺ said, O Fatima, what prevents you from doing what I am telling you or ordering you to do? Which is that when you wake up or when you have the morning time come, or when the evening time comes, meaning the morning or evening adhkar. When the morning comes or when the evening comes, to say, Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum, to call on Allah by these two names. بِرَحْمَتِكَ أَسْتَغِيث. I ask you and I beg of you, because of your rahmah and from your rahmah, your mercy, to correct for me all of my affairs. أَصْلِحْ لِي شَأْنِي كُلَّهُ. Correct for me all of my matters. وَلَا تَكِلْنِي إِلَى نَفْسِي طَرْفَةَ عَيْنٍ. And do not leave me to myself, even just for the blink of an eye. In a very beautiful story, the Prophet ﷺ one day, or Fatima radiallahu anha, one day, she was complaining and thinking about the pain in her hands and the blisters in her hands from a raha, which is like a mill, the old things that they used to use back in the day to crush food. So her hands were being affected by how she had to work by herself, and she's the daughter of a Prophet ﷺ. So she heard and she asked her father to send a servant. She heard that her father could give her a servant perhaps, so she was hoping that he would send a servant that would help her in the household duties, and she would not have to get blisters on her hands and it would be such difficult work for her. So she asked and sent to the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ was not able to come right away. And when he did come, Fatima and Ali radiallahu anhuma, they were already getting ready for bed. And they were sitting in their bed. So they told the Prophet ﷺ to enter when he came. So the Prophet ﷺ came in and they were going to stand up for him. And the Prophet ﷺ said, عَلَى مَكَانِكُمَا. Stay in your places, it's okay. So the Prophet ﷺ came and sat on the bed between Ali and Fatima. And he says, أَلَا أَدُلُّكُمَا عَلَى مَا هُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمَا مِنْ خَادِمٍ أَوْ عَلَى خَيْرٍ مِمَّا سَأَلْتُمَا. Shouldn't I tell you something that's even better what you asked for? They asked if we could have a servant that would help us in the house. So the Prophet ﷺ said, how about I tell you something that's even better? إِذَا أَخَذْتُمَا مَضَاجِعَكُمَا فَسَبِّحَا 33 وَاحْمَدَا 33 وَكَبِّرَا 34 فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمَا مِنْ خَادِمٍ. The Prophet ﷺ said, I'll tell you something better. When you go to sleep at night, say Subhanallah 33 times, and Alhamdulillah 33 times, and Allahu Akbar 34 times, just like after salawat. The Prophet ﷺ then said, if that thing that I'm telling you is better for you than a servant. This dhikr, this reminder to say Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, 100 times altogether, this is better for you than a servant. Many of us may think it's better for us in reward. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you more for making dhikr than for having a servant. So the reward is greater. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you. And some of the ulama, they added another meaning to it, which is very interesting. They said, this is a dua which will give a person physical power more than if they had a servant. Meaning that she was being tired. Fatima radiallahu anha was tired out from all of the household duties that she had to do, and she wanted a servant. So the Prophet ﷺ is telling her, if you make these adhkar, they will give you a strength and a power, as some of the ulama have interpreted the hadith to mean. So we should try this if we find difficulty in our work, in our jobs, and we find that we are not able to do a lot of what we want to do during the daytime because of laziness and lethargy. We should try saying this dhikr, but we should not try it. We should trust in the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam by saying Subhanallah 33 times, Alhamdulillah 33 times, and Allahu Akbar 34 times. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he taught his children a very important concept that I think all of us are guilty of lacking, which is the concept of zuhud. Zuhud means that a person does not care too much for this worldly life. And as we know, we live in a very advanced society and we have the best of things, and whenever we have the opportunity to buy something new and buy something expensive and to treat ourselves, we will do so. But the Prophet ﷺ, he would always, or many times, prevent himself from some of the luxuries of this life because they did not concern him. Because his greater concern was al-akhirah. And he did not want these worldly things to distract him. A lot of us know that if you want something new, if you want a new car, or you want new shoes, or you want a new cell phone, that a lot of times you'll start waiting for it and looking for it and doing research on it. And then you'll keep going to the store, going back and forth, looking at it and thinking about it. And then you'll start talking about it with your friends, and you'll ask them for their input on if you should buy it or not. And then when you finally get it, it's distracting you. You start thinking about this beautiful thing that you got, and it's always on your mind. Until after some time passes and it just becomes some other normal possession. But we notice that it does distract us for a long time when we get involved in material goods. And if that's just one thing, what if our life is a constant cycle of buying something else and looking for something else and wanting something else? And even worse, when we don't have the money for it, so we're just dreaming and imagining things that we know we cannot get. So all of these things distract a person from what's more important. That's why the Prophet ﷺ didn't want to concern himself with material things that would distract him from al-akhirah. So the Prophet ﷺ one day, he came to the house of Fatima, and she realized that the Prophet ﷺ came or was outside, but then he didn't enter, he left and he went back. So Fatima radiallahu anha was concerned and confused. Why did the Prophet ﷺ come to her house, but then he didn't enter or asked to enter, he just left? So she sent Ali radiallahu anhu saying, go ask the Prophet ﷺ what happened. So the Prophet ﷺ said something very amazing. He said, رَأَيْتُ عَلَى بَابِهَا سِتْرًا مَوْشِيًّا فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ما لي وللدنيا. The Prophet ﷺ said, the reason I didn't enter is I saw a garment like a beautiful curtain on the door. They put some new curtain that was maybe a bit expensive on the door. So the Prophet ﷺ told him, I have nothing to do with this dunya. I have no interest in this dunya. The Prophet ﷺ, something even this small, that they bought some beautiful fabric and they put it on their door, he wanted to teach his family and his daughter that we are the family which is based on zuhd, on the renouncement of this worldly life, except for what's necessary. So the Prophet ﷺ told her, I had no interest in this dunya. And they took it down, this fabric that they had bought, and they sent it. The Prophet ﷺ said, send it to some people, some of the poor people, perhaps they may benefit from it. That doesn't mean the Prophet ﷺ would go to an extreme in this. Rather, the Prophet ﷺ would also give gifts and presents to his family and to his daughter. So we have to strike a balance. The Prophet ﷺ would encourage his children to have zuhd, but at the same time he would give them things. For example, the Prophet ﷺ, one day he sent a garment that had some silk in it to Ali radiallahu anhu. So Ali radiallahu anhu, he said about this garment, and it has silk in it. He said, Ya Rasulullah, what should I do with it? Should I wear it? So the Prophet ﷺ said, no, send it to al-Fawatim, meaning some of the women named Fatima, because his wife, Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, is named Fatima, and Ali's mother was named Fatima, and also Fatima was the daughter of Hamza radiallahu anhu. So the Prophet ﷺ would strike a balance. And likewise us, we have to strike a balance in our household when it comes to material things. We will notice that if we continue to give ourselves and our children everything that they want, we and our children will become very spoiled. We would not last a moment in another country without all of these luxuries. We would realize that we have become fully dependent on having the latest iPhone and on having the fanciest thing and living in the nicest neighborhood. We would not be able to last without these things. So the Prophet ﷺ, he's teaching us that if we attach ourselves too much to the dunya, it will distract us from the akhirah. So we're only harming ourselves. We will become very spoiled, and we will raise children also who are very spoiled. But at the same time, we have to give that balance of giving our children gifts, giving them nice things every once in a while, because it's not about stinginess. It's not just about preventing ourselves from things. But zuhd has a purpose, which is things which distract you from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if we have good things, but they're not distracting us from worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then there's no harm in this matter. And finally, I'll end inshallah with the hadith of Nu'man ibn Bashir, which is relating to what we're talking about right now. Nu'man ibn Bashir is one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, one day my father gave me a gift, like an amount of money or some kind of wealth that my father gave to me. So Nu'man said, my mother didn't like that, or she didn't want that gift to be given to me unless the Prophet ﷺ witnessed it. She said, go and ask the Prophet ﷺ and make him a witness that you received this gift. So Nu'man ibn Bashir went with his father to the Prophet ﷺ, and Bashir, he said, Ya Rasulullah, I gave this amount of money or this wealth to my son Nu'man. So the Prophet ﷺ said to Bashir, do you have any other children? So he said, yes. He said, have you given them all like this gift? So the Prophet, so Bashir, he said, no. So the Prophet ﷺ said, أشهد على هذا غيري فإني لا أشهد على جور. The Prophet ﷺ said, then look for somebody else to witness this, because I will not witness injustice. I will not witness oppression. This means that it's not fair, and it's not from justice for the parents to favor one of their children more than the other, to give them things and prevent the other children. Rather, they have to try to be as fair and as just as possible between all of the children. And this has some fiqh rulings that we don't have time to delve into. From them, if some of the children require more expenses than the other children, this may be a special circumstance. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to benefit us from what we've heard. Allahumma ighfir lana warhamna wa anta khayrul rahimin.
Please pass the boxes, and inshallah, after the prayer, we have some announcements.
الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. One of the community members, a brother named Abdul Qadir, passed away this week. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy on him, to have mercy upon all of the Muslims, to cure the sick from our Muslim brothers and sisters, to alleviate the suffering of Muslims in all the countries around the world. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات. عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله العظيم يعظكم واشكروه على نعمه يزدكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون.